Did you know that no two people are going to smell this candle in exactly the same way? It's true. Sense is all open to interpretation and perception. There are over 450 olfactory receptors in your brain, and it all comes down to the way your body is coated with amino acids. Change one amino acid on one gene, and you're going to smell that scent completely different. It's always scent that draws you to what you finally choose. Because when you think about it, that's what people care about the most, is the scent. When you go and look at candles yourself, you're not looking at just the jars or the name. You really care about the scent. It's estimated that there are 400 genes that code for smell. That's over 900,000 combinations of that one candle that I just... Hi, and welcome back. I'm Lisa with Candles by Sincerely Ice Blue. If you're new here, don't forget to click on the subscribe button and become part of our community and our channel. Today, we're going to be talking about fragrances, specifically the differences between fragrance oils, essential oils, how to figure out what you want to use, understanding the differences between notes, and then finishing up with talking about creating your own custom blends. So, what are we waiting for? Let's take a look. As we mentioned earlier, scent is unique for all of us. We all smell the exact same item completely different. If I give you a stick of cinnamon, you may be picking up different hints or notes within there than the person next to you or than me. Your customers are going to be the same way, and that's what leads them to choosing their candles. It's the scent. You can have the most beautiful jars, the most creative names and logos, but none of that matters if they take the lid off or they pick it up and smell it, and it's not pleasing to them. When you're choosing your fragrances, you have choices between fragrance oils and essential oils. Some of the things you want to take a look at are, first of all, cost. Fragrance oils come in many different sizes. I can get the larger 16-ounce bottles, I can do 8-ounce bottles, or I can do 1-ounce bottles, and I can even go up to 5-gallon jugs on fragrance oil if I really love that fragrance or know I'm going to be mass manufacturing that. The difference in price between them is that 1-ounce size might be $2.35 for 1 ounce. I jump up to the next size at an 8-ounce, and I might be at about $8 for this bottle, but then I jump up to the 16-ounce size, and I'm about $12 to $13. Now, those are just average estimates because depending on your fragrance and where you buy it from, those prices are all completely different. But it just gives you an idea. In regard to the essential oils, you've seen essential oils before. They come in very small bottles. And you can buy them in larger ones, but more often than not, they're these smaller sizes. This little bottle here, I got in a set that came in a kit, and the kit had 6 bottles, and each bottle was 0.33 ounces, and the total cost for the package was $17. So that gives you an idea on cost. Fragrance oils are going to be a lot more affordable and cost effective for you. Another big difference in between them is that fragrance oils tend to have a better hot and cold throw and last longer, whereas essential oils are going to evaporate quickly and therefore not have a very strong hot throw. Working with soy especially, essential oils do tend to evaporate quicker, and therefore you won't get that hot throw that you might be looking for. Also, fragrance oils do have a far larger variety of scents for you to choose from. Because they're synthetic, you're going to find some blends and fragrances that are already maybe what you're looking for instead of you having to blend a fragrance. So for instance, one of the bottles I have here is from a company called Midwest Fragrance, and it's called Blazing Bonfire. This I may choose to use alone, or I may mix it with some other different variety of scents. Just depends on what I'm going for. What may help you when you're choosing scents is trying to determine what you're trying to achieve with your line. For instance, if I'm going for a therapeutic line, because aromatherapy has been shown to help people with their moods and also change different functions within our bodies, such as blood pressure and reducing stress. If I'm going for a line like that, I might be considering some different aromatherapy type scents. So for instance, lavender has been known to lower blood pressure and is calming. Rosemary is a midday pickup. Peppermint has been used for clarity. I know when I used to train sales professionals, I always had peppermints on the table because it helps with that mental focus. Peppermint is also good if you're working to relieve cough or cold symptoms. It's great in tea. Lemon has been shown to reduce stress, lower blood pressure, reduce anxiety. Bergamot lowers blood pressure and anxiety. It improves mood. It reduces stress. And lemongrass is one of my favorites. It absolutely energizes and helps reduce anxiety. You'll also notice that a lot of cleaning products have a fresh scent or a clean citrus or lemon scent to them. All of these come into play when you're trying to develop your candle line. We're talking about choosing your fragrance. One of the things you're going to want to keep in mind is, what do you want your hot throw to be like? Are you going for something that's more mild? Are you going for something that will fill the whole room and linger for hours? All of those come into play where you're choosing your scents as well. Now, since we're talking about or mentioned hot throw quickly, a couple things to keep in mind. Obviously, scent. Those lighter scents aren't going to linger necessarily as well as some of the more stronger scents like a patchouli. And we're going to be talking about notes here in just a moment. We're talking about increasing your hot throw. One thing you want to do is read the manufacturer's specifications for your wax and also for your fragrance oils. This way you can determine the best temperature, the optimal temperature to add your fragrance oil. Don't measure your fragrance oil just by guessing or with a measuring cup. Always use a scale to measure out the proper amounts in ounces or grams, depending on your preference on how you like to work with your waxes and your fragrance oils. Another thing is your vessel is going to come into play. If I have a smaller, like a tea light versus a 3-wick candle container, I'm going to get different hot throws from those because of the way that the fragrance can disperse in the wax and therefore disperse into the air. Your wick is going to come into play, depending on the wick sizes and also the types of wicks. Are you using a cotton wick? Are you using a braided wick? Are you using a wooden wick? This is all going to be something you definitely want to test so that you're achieving the hot throw that you're looking for. Going back to adding that fragrance oil into our wax, make sure that you're stirring that for at least 2 minutes. And I know a lot of the manufacturers recommend between 1 and 2 minutes. I prefer 2. And you want to stir that slowly because you don't want to create a lot of air pockets and air bubbles within your wax. But what that excessive stirring or the longer stirring is doing for you is helping to ensure that your wax and your fragrance oil get a chance to bind together. Speaking of binding together, that takes us to cure time. Now, the cure times are going to be different depending on the type of wax that you're using. For a paraffin wax, the recommendation is 3 to 4 days minimum. If I'm using a soy or a coconut wax, recommended minimum is a week, best practice, 2 weeks. All of your candles, best practice, you want to probably focus on 1 week minimum to 2 weeks. Again, I want to give my candle time to set and for the fragrance oils and the wax to bind. So that way when I do burn it, I get a good burn, I'm creating a good wax pool, and I'm also getting the hot throw that I'm looking for. So all your notes can be grouped into a few different categories. We have citrus, which is the lemons and the oranges. We have spicy, which is cinnamons or nutmeg. Fruity is the apples and the berries. Floral being the roses and lavenders. There's a gourmet, so think coffee or whiskey or rum or tequila. Earthy, patchouli, sandalwood, the smell of fall leaves, or something like this bonfire would fall under that earthy. Ambiance, I might have a tobacco smell that takes me back to like a speakeasy type idea. And then musky and leather. How do you take all of this and narrow it down and figure out what's going to go with what for your own custom scents, especially knowing that scent and smell is subjective to the person smelling it? How are you going to create something that people are going to love and not just you? It starts by taking a look at those top, middle, and bottom notes. You can do that right on the manufacturer's website for the fragrance oil. One thing I've done is I've started making a chart of top, middle, and bottom notes so that I can look at the chart and say, okay, there's vanilla here, there's vanilla here. I want a stronger vanilla scent. What might vanilla combine with? Candle Science has a wonderful feature on their site where when you scroll to underneath the top, bottom, and middle notes, it tells you some recommendations for what that fragrance blends well with, or suggestions. So for instance, if I scroll down and I see that they're recommending a pumpkin spice, maybe I don't like the smell of pumpkin and spice together, but I like pumpkin. So if they're recommending that'll work with pumpkin, maybe I'll go look at some other pumpkin flavors. So again, this is all subjective. You got to start with what you might like to begin with. Now down the road, you may find yourself making fragrances that you absolutely can't stand. You don't like them, but you found that your customers do. Maybe people have asked you for it. So for instance, my husband does not like patchouli at all, but he knows that we're going to have to make some patchouli candles because people do like that scent. And we've actually been asked for it already. We've been asked if we're going to be making some patchouli candles. So it's all subjective. Keep that in mind. Let's take a look at how to put this all together and let's mix a blend and make a candle. First thing we want to do is prep our jar. What we're using today is an 11-ounce blue Libby jar. It's a rock tumbler from Candlewick, and it's going to hold 9 ounces of wax and fragrance combined. First thing we're going to do is we're going to spray it out with some rubbing alcohol, and then he's going to wipe down both the inside and outside of the glass. From there, we're going to get our wick prepped, and we're using today the CD18s. They're 6-inch pre-tabbed wicks from the Flaming Candle. And then we're using the candle wick stickers from a company through Etsy. And I will drop the links in for you to take a look at those. Now the lid on that rock tumbler is a wood lid and the color is honey oak. One thing you want to do when you're placing your wick is you want to try and get it as centered as possible. And then you're going to want to push it down. What we actually do is we have a piece of PVC, which we can use to press that down firmly because you want to make sure that that wick does not float away. All right, so the next step is we're going to get our wax melted. We have measured out 8.1 ounces of wax, and what we're using today is the American Freedom Wax by American Soy Organics. And then while we're having the wax melt, we can prep our fragrances. Now, when you're looking at your fragrances, one thing we did to kind of determine what to make is, and you can see my little baggie right here, we've dipped each of these Q-tips into the 2 fragrances that we've decided to use. So what we're looking at today is the apple strudel and the vanilla. And when we first did this, we determined that a 50-50 mix really wasn't that great. We wanted to be a little bit stronger on the apple strudel. So our mix today, we're going to do a 2-to-1 ratio, meaning we're going to have double the apple strudel fragrance than we do the vanilla fragrance. We also finished prepping our jar. We got our wick holder on and we secured it to keep the wick nice and taut and tight so that it doesn't move around or float around. And we did that by using a clothespin. All right, so we're going to start by measuring out our fragrance. And like I said, we decided we're going to use 2 parts of the apple and 1 part of vanilla. So the first thing we did was we zeroed out our scale. And now we're starting with the apple strudel. So the way you want to calculate this is you need to know the fill weight of your jar. Our fill weight is 9 ounces. And we know that we want to do a 10% fragrance oil mix. So what we do there is we take the 9 ounces times 10%, which gives us a number of 0.9 for the fragrance oil. So what that tells us is we need 0.8, we need 8 8.1 ounces of wax, and that's going to leave us with 0.9 ounces for fragrance oil. So if we want 2 parts of the apple, we're going to want 0.6 of the apple fragrance, and where you can see we're just a little bit over there. And we want 0.3 on vanilla. Those two together are going to give us a total weight of 9 ounces. And that 9 ounces being the total candle weight, the wax plus the fragrance oil. Now this is just a calculation to make 1 candle. If you were going to make 5 candles, I would take each of those numbers times 5. So I would take 8.1 ounces of wax times 5, 0.9 ounces of fragrance times 5, and then I'd have my numbers for what I need in total for wax and also for the fragrance oil. So you can see we have that all measured out, and now we just have to wait for the wax to melt. 160-degree mark, which is optimal temperature for the American soy product to add our fragrance. So we're going to put that in. What we want to do is stir for 2 minutes so that we're giving that fragrance oil time to bind with the soy. Now the American Freedom Wax is 100% soy. So for optimal hot throw or optimal fragrance results, we heated it to 190, let it cool down to 160, and added our fragrance. Now that we've stirred the fragrance for 2 minutes, the temperature is still at 160. We've zeroed out our scale. We're transferring the wax over to a nice, neat little pouring pitcher. And I did get that in a kit off of Amazon, so I'll also include the link for you on that. Now you want to pour your wax slowly. All right, there we are. Now we're just going to let this cure, and then we're going to do our burn test on it in about a week to 2 weeks. One thing to keep in mind is, even though this candle holds 9 ounces, you can see that it's all the way at the top. So if I did want to make this candle and put this lid on it, I'm going to have to leave space for that, which means for this candle, I'm probably looking at 7.5 to 8 ounces. Okay, so many different fragrances to think about. Where do you start? Don't worry about it. Start with what you love. Don't worry so much about everything we talked about today. It is going to be important. It's going to help you understand and blend. Don't think that because everybody else has a pineapple upside down cake candle, I can't make one. Of course you can, because your design, your percentages are going to be unique to what you create. Because listen, we talked about that at the very beginning. That one little cinnamon stick, there are 900,000 variations of how somebody is smelling that. Now start mixing that cinnamon stick with a vanilla and a pumpkin spice or an apple strudel, and wow! I can't wait to hear about all of your stories. I can't wait to hear about all the candles you make and all the variations you've come up with for your specific scents and your unique lines. That's it for today. It was a lot. I felt like I talked a lot. So until next time, live your life out loud and keep being unique. Bye.